So hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're super excited today. I am Megan Phillips here with Jody Ambrose of the Train with Trust Project. We are co-founders of our nonprofit Train with Trust Project, dedicated to making animal behavior education accessible to everyone and to promoting evidence-based practices in equine training and equine care. So we are very happy again to be joined by Dr. Sue Dyson, world-renowned orthopedist, and the focus of the 24 behaviors of the Ridden Horse in Pain, shifting the paradigm of how we see lameness film. This is the 1-year anniversary of the release of that film. And so we thought it would be a great idea to do an update and meet with Kathryn Lauritzen, who is the filmmaker, director, and owner of Padma Video. And also we are joined by Lauren McMahon, who is Galina's writer and owner, and the other central focus of the film. So we're really glad everybody's joining us today, and we'll go ahead and jump right in.
Okay, so I think we should start by asking Kathryn, how did you come up with the idea for the film? What created the spark that started it all?
Yeah, so I was working with Equitopia to do a course with Sue on the 24 behaviors, and it's an excellent course. And if you want to go super deep, I suggest you check it out. But it's very educational. And in the process of doing that, I started thinking about how emotional it is from a rider's standpoint to go through not knowing why something's up with your horse. And we've all been there, and I'm a horse person too. So when you search and you can't make it better for your horse, it's a good story. And so, I talked to Sue about it, and she was game, and, we took it from there, and you guys seem to be a great team to hook up with, to complement some of the holes in what we were trying to do to get this thing made. So, and it was really gnarly because we shot it during COVID, and it was terrible because what we did was, I would go out locally, and I live in Fairfield, so I'm by UC Davis, and, there's a lot of horse things going on here. So, I would go out and pick a horse and rider and shoot it and send it off to Sue. Is this an appropriate example? And we did find a horse and a rider that we thought would be perfect, because the horse showed all these behaviors, but wasn't lame, wasn't limping. And the person that owned the horse was also a part-time trainer, and she was a part-time vet tech. And unfortunately, that fell apart. That situation ended a week before we were going to shoot. And I was like, oh my God, I loved her so much. She was so perfect. How are we ever going to find someone that's that medically minded, that gets it to that level and is a really good rider and competes and has a horse that is showing these behaviors? And somehow the universe manifested Lauren because she was also working for a vet, and is a really good rider, and competes, and has a horse that was exhibiting these behaviors. So that was great. But also we had a second camera person lined up, got COVID 2 days before, so that fell apart. And then Megan got COVID. So it was a gnarly situation, but it was also a godsend, because I think in retrospect, looking back now a year ago, I think the situation needed someone who was as lovable as Lauren, who loved her horse as much as Lauren did, searched as hard as Lauren did to find answers, and was as strong as she is, because, you put yourself out there, you get really vulnerable, and the thing has almost 300,000 hits. And so there's a section of the public starts attacking. And so Lauren had to deal with that. And that's the part that broke my heart, where I'm like, oh my God, we put her out there, and people are super opinionated. So that's my perspective on it.
Long before we ever found even the first person that had to drop out, you had really emphasized certain things that you were looking for. And I think you've mentioned most of them in terms of the criteria that you were looking for in the horse and in the skill of the rider and the attitude of the rider. But I think the thing you emphasized more than anything to me was that you wanted somebody who was going to be truly open and willing to really be vulnerable on camera and talk about how they feel about the situation, as opposed to just the nuts and bolts of what they're going through with their horse. And I think that was the thing that manifested itself, whatever it was, 48 hours before, maybe 36 hours before the shoot. I think Sue was maybe already on the plane when Lauren showed up, which is just crazy. So I think we could not have done any better on that front. But as you were just saying, that comes along with a lot of risk. I want to ask Lauren, for you, what was it like to be asked, and what was the decision-making process that you went through to agree to do it?
Well, I was really excited about it when I heard it, because kind of what happened to me is Tom Castleberry, a vet who was briefly in the film, reached out to my trainer, Gree McFarland, and was like, hey, do you have any horses in your barn with a rider that would fit the description that you just mentioned? And Gree came up to me and was like, hey, this might give you a chance to figure out what's going on, because I know that you've thrown so many resources into figuring it out. And I was like, I'm on it. Let's do it. Like, there was no second thought about what could the repercussions of, being part of this film be. And in all honesty, going back and looking at it now, like I would 100% do it again. And so jumping into it kind of last minute, like, was probably good for me, because I didn't have too much time to actually think about oh, what did I just, commit myself to? I don't regret it by any means, but it got a lot more attention than I kind of thought it would, just from everybody, and being part of that film, and now going to horse shows occasionally and having people come up and talk to me was something that was new for me, because I'm used to kind of being in the background. I'm not a fame-seeking person. I just want to ride my horse and give them kisses and go home, So
yeah, it was very brave. I mean, and like you said, being last minute, I think that probably was sort of a blessing, because you didn't have too much time to think about the downside, which, it was all meant to be. I'm really happy you made a shout out to Dr. Castleberry, because we love Dr. Castleberry, and it's kind of part of the lore of the film that it happened, because of him. So can you talk a little bit about what the actual film shoot was like? For both of you, I think it'd be interesting to hear, actually all three of you, excuse me, we don't want to waste Sue's input here, but all three of you, what the actual shoot was like for you. Let's start with Lauren.
Yeah. The shoot the actual shoot, it was so hot. It was so hot outside. And we were out there all day. And so, we were all trying to stay hydrated and stay positive. And I'm not going to lie, the multiple times I had to get on Galina out there, I was like, man, I wish we picked a cooler day to do this. But the whole process was really interesting. And I know that the film could only be so long, and I think a lot more went into it than what we were like logistically able to show. And as I said, we spent the whole day there. And so obviously we could not send out a 8-hour film of everything, but we went over every part of her. Like, I don't think we left one stone unturned. And I know people had comments about, oh, what about this? What about this? Like, we looked at it all. And everything played into where we ended up with her. For me, I was trying to stay as positive as possible. I kind of went into it like a little naive, in the sense of like, oh, she just probably did something silly and needs 6 months of rehab. I wasn't entirely sure what I was getting myself into. And so definitely the end for me was quite emotional, because I hope that it's obvious that I have a very strong connection with Galina, and I love her more than any other horse that I've ever met in my life. So the filming process was tough, because at the end, when I kind of heard like, hey, these are your options, but this is what it's looking like, I needed a moment to collect myself and be able to express my feelings and talk about what I was feeling without just, bursting into tears, which I did do, I will say. But I wanted it to focus. I didn't want that on camera, in the sense, because I wanted to be able to talk about it. And so the filming process for me was long, hot, and definitely emotional. But as I said, I would 100% do it again.
Yeah. And for me, I can just say same, very hot, carrying a very big camera. And, sometimes you have to do things again too. So it's like, I didn't get that. Let's do it again. Like, I need another angle. And I feel sorry for the people I'm bossing around, like, get back up on the horse, or, it turns everything very long. And it's true. And everything in editing is, what's the necessary thing to show to get to the point. And at the end, you did cry, and I did film that, and I didn't keep it in the film. And it was a decision to make, because I thought, drama's sake, I could leave that in. It would be a harder film to watch, but I decided not to, because it felt exploitive. So, and somebody did ask me, why did you choose to leave the end where it was at? Because it's a little bit sad. And I said, because that's reality. This is a documentary. This is not, we're just going to show the way it came down. So it was tough. I was actually crying at the end too. And at one point, when you were crying and I was crying, I was like, is this in focus? Because I can't see.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sue, what about you? What was filming like for you?
To an extent, it was like a normal working day, in that I do this thing all day, every day. And it's always emotional, because I always get involved with the horse and the client. And particularly when the rider is articulate and displays their emotions in such a demonstrative way, it's always touching for me. Galina wasn't the most cooperative of patients with respect to nerve blocks. And that's always a challenging thing, because you have to do nerve blocks in order to determine where the pain is coming from. That's an absolute prerequisite. But you need to have a cooperative individual. And we were just so lucky with Dr. Jim, who was so excellent in his handling of that situation, because we had to work with a veterinarian from the United States, because it was work done in the United States. I could just only supervise. But Dr. Jim, who I hadn't met before, was absolutely fantastic to work with. And that was another bonus, as it were, because we didn't know who we were going to be working with until more or less the day before. So that was very serendipitous. Another bonus for me was that not only did Galina demonstrate many of the behaviors of the Ridden Horse painethogram, but also she showed abnormal behaviors when she was in the cross ties, when she was being handled, and when she was being tacked up, which enabled us to bring that into the conversation, which is also an important part of any investigation as far as I'm concerned. And the fact that the saddle didn't fit the horse well, and that was part of the problem, also enabled us to bring that into the documentary, which to me was a bonus, really, because it's a very important part of the horse tack rider triad. We can't look at anything as an individual component. All are significant. And that was what was also good about having Lauren, in that we needed a rider who could ride well in balance, and we couldn't have anybody suggesting that part of the problems were rider induced, and that was never in question. So yes, it was very hot. I've never drunk so much water, I don't think, in a day. But I think that what we achieved, I said at the end of the day, this could not possibly have gone better. And that was really exciting, really exciting.
Yeah, I think you raised something that a lot of people who see the film do not realize, which is that because you're not licensed in the United States, you couldn't be the treating veterinarian, and we did need another veterinarian, and that we found Dr. Jim the night before, I think. Is that correct?
A few days before, but I'm glad you brought that up because he was amazing in that we had now gotten a rider, and then we had to scramble to get a vet, and I called every vet in Northern California and I'm like, please, you don't know me. Please, would you do this? And actually he came forward. He said, yeah, I'm doing this for you. And Lauren had just started working for him. So that's how she said, try him. He's a great guy. He was amazing. He was so on it. And he's like, okay, I'm there for you. And he jumped in. He was a fan of Sue's, as a lot of people are. And it was just amazing how he came forward quickly, and the whole veterinary community in America kind of supported us too, because when we were going to make the film, we sent out an email to a lot of people saying, if we make this, will you show it to clients? Will you support the film? Will you teach it if you're a professor? And so many people in America said yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is the goal, is to get everyone involved. The reason that we got involved is because we thought this was a great project for spreading this message to a large number of people, as opposed to just one person at a time, which is sort of, a slow, painful process. I just want to add, because you guys mentioned that you guys were both in tears. I was also in tears that day because I wasn't there, because I'd been exposed to COVID, and Megan was deathly ill. We were stuck in our rental house, not able to be at the shoot. And so for us, it was almost a little bit like the experience of people who came to the film after it was produced, because we didn't get to see the actual shoot. We heard what happened, but it was really kind of magical to be a part of the process of the planning and seeing it come together. And then all of a sudden this film sort of appears out of nowhere. It was really amazing to see it come together like that. Lauren, can you talk a little bit? Well, actually, we'll talk to all of you about this. Once the film came out, you've sort of touched on, both you and Kath have touched on that there were, some good and bad reactions. I will say that from my perspective, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. I was actually really surprised, having been a part of the horse industry for a really long time. I was really surprised at how little negative feedback we got. But there was a little bit, and I don't want to just focus on that. I'd like to talk about all of the positive feedback as well. But let's go ahead and just kind of talk about what were some of the challenging things that happened when the film was released.
Yeah. Well, I think I personally got stuck a little bit into the realm of YouTube comments. And personally, I feel like a lot of the comments that were on the film itself, especially as time went on, were mostly positive. But there were a couple that were not so positive. And a lot of it, unless someone wants to correct me on this, were targeted slightly more at me if they were not positive about it. Is, why is your horse in the cross ties? Why are you listening to other people? Why didn't you do something about it? And I feel like I need to touch on the part that I got into this industry competitively at 16, and I bought Galina soon after that. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm going to be blunt. I relied solely on my elders to tell me, what is and isn't normal. And I held a lot of those people in very high standards. And if whatever they say went with me, hey, your horse just needs to be ridden harder. Like, well, I don't know any better, and as I went and I learned and I started getting into the vet industry, and I went, oh, wait, that's not quite right. I started searching, and I put a lot of time, money, effort, and blood and tears into figuring out what was wrong with her. And so I personally do feel like it was a little unfair, without getting the whole picture, like to attack someone on what they're doing with their horse, you know? But overall, I think a lot of people took the right message from it was, hey, I have the same issue. You know, I don't know what to do anymore. And I did get quite a few messages on Instagram and Facebook from people in completely different countries. Hey, I watched your film. It really touched me. Please let me know how Galina's doing. You know, I'm going through the same thing. And I think the big message is, we probably, all of us who have ever had a horse, or at least a horse in competitive sport, have had similar trials and tribulations. You know, it's like, what happened? What am I not doing right? And you put a lot of blame on yourself. And I just wanted to make sure that, like, or if I should put it like this, like, I didn't mind being the scapegoat, in a sense. Like, if you want to place some blame on me for the decisions I made, like, I know I wasn't right all the time, but at least don't do what I did. You know what I mean? Like, stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone tell you you're wrong if you truly feel like you're right, and fight for your horses. And don't believe all of the, you know, old people in our sport that tell us we just need to ride harder and they're just naughty. Don't believe it.
That's a really great point. You raised a few good points. One of which I just actually, before we came on for this live stream, I was reading a post by Piper Clem, who does the podcast, and she just was bringing up the topic of the fact that our sport has always really relied on a few big name idols and followed those people and done everything they say, and there's been you know, there's a big risk with that. They may be wrong. They may not be good people. And there's a discussion now to be had about who should we be listening to. And I think that's part of what we created the Train with Trust project for, is that there needs to be a resource for people. I think Equitopia was also created in this vein. There needs to be a resource making evidence-based information available, so it's not just opinion. And also, we need to be lifting up the people that are doing a good job. We need to be focusing on what people are doing right and not tearing people down who are doing things in a way that we don't agree with. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we covered Social License to Ride, that it's not productive to, you know, you obviously were trying to do good, but, you know, well by your horse and do a good thing for people and educate people, and for people to come out of the woodwork and attack you is really the dark side of social media, and also the dark side of the horse industry as well. So I'm glad you brought that up. Kath, do you want to talk a little bit about the reaction that you got to the film?
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly positive, but you know, occasionally somebody would criticize some part of the production, and all I can say is you try your best, and that's it. You know, again, like I said earlier, it was hard for me to see people attack Lauren because I felt responsible, and it's hard for all of us because every single one of us became very vulnerable in the process of putting this in the world. You know, it's not easy is all I can say. And to take an 8-hour day and edit it down to 35 minutes isn't easy, because it's decision. And those decisions have repercussions, and you try very, very hard to not be propaganda. You know, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of propaganda. And in my opinion, you know, we could have gone out and said, okay, now let's start getting opinions of how people feel this isn't correct. But at least with Sue, there's a lot of science behind it, and there's peer review stuff going on. And then there's gut. So as a horse person, gut is, I believe she's right. You know, I think you can look at a horse's face, and one of the biggest lines in the whole film was, and it was in the trailer, Lauren said, she's just not happy. And I know happy is not a scientific term, but there's something about a connection with a horse where you look at it and you go, you're not comfortable in your own skin. And sometimes it's a little more obvious. And sometimes you just go, it's the way you're standing. Like you're not standing right. What's up? And so, you know, the big hope is that people will look at their horses differently, that the takeaway is don't wait for the head bob, that if you believe in your heart something's up, you've got to go get some help by a good professional. One of the things you run up against is not a lot of people are trained to do this. And Sue, you can take it from there. I mean, a lot of vets don't come out for 8 hours and look at your horse and nerve block after nerve block. And it's so systematic and it's so precise, and nerve blocks and imaging and nerve block to get back on. It's, you know, and by the end of the day, it feels very precise, but it's hard to find a vet that can do that. Sue?
I think it's important to recognize that we perhaps took longer than it would in a normal day. So I would say in general terms, it would take half a day to start acquiring the history and then doing the full clinical examination, doing the nerve blocks and acquiring the images. So it's not a normal to be an 8-hour day. And we had a lot of walking to do from various different sites where we were able to work, which added to the time. But going back to what the criticisms that were fed back to us through social media and the YouTube comments, I think that perhaps people didn't realize how difficult it is to cram so much information into 35 minutes. People's attention spans are not longer than that. So we had to make some big decisions about what to include and what not to include. And the real focus was going to be on the 24 behaviors and how we investigated the horse. There was a lot of criticism about the fact that we didn't discuss the horse's feet. Although we had acquired close-up footage of the feet, I talked to camera about the feet, but the feet were not the primary problem. I believe absolutely 100% when one is tailoring a rehabilitation program for any horse, we talk about everything. But that wasn't part of the film, really. The film was to address how do we identify the problems? What were the primary problems? Now, there are many different ways of trimming and shoeing horses. And there are many different opinions. Even amongst the farriers, there are different opinions. There was a lot, well, no, I wouldn't say a lot. There was some criticism from people about riding horses, putting shoes on them, putting bits in their mouths, using them competitively. I think it was a minority comments, but they came across very strongly. And I think this is one of the problems within the equine world, is that we are not really talking from a united front because there are these differences of opinion. And we have to accept that barefoot may be very appropriate for some horses, but it does depend on the environment in which they are and what sort of job they're going to do, and a number of other factors as well. Not all horses are suitable to be barefoot. That's not to say that there aren't some horses who are very, very successful barefoot. But there was criticism about using horses for jumping without the recognition that actually, when you look at data that is available about injury risk, there is no evidence that horses competing are at greater risk of sustaining some injuries than other horses. Now, if you look at the precise injuries that, for example, a Grand Prix show jumper might sustain, they may be different from the pleasure horse, but the pleasure horse is equally vulnerable to developing lameness problems. So I think that it is somewhat naive to suggest that because you are using a horse for competition purposes, you are exploiting that horse, and it is wrong to exploit that horse. Because I very strongly believe, as a rider and former competitor myself, that horses, I do believe, genuinely enjoy working as a partnership, assuming that they are pain-free. And so I think that the the vocal minority spoke from positions sometimes of lack of knowledge, and their criticisms were not really fair because they weren't aware of what evidence there is out there. Largely, we had an incredibly good feedback, I think, and the viewing figures spoke for themselves. And for me, who wants to educate people, this ability to tell a story and educate people was just a fantastic opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm going to add a couple of the criticisms that haven't been mentioned that I heard, and I don't want to focus just on the negative like you just said, because it really was 99.99% positive. We had so much great feedback, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about some of that as well. But two of the criticisms that I have heard are it's the rider causing the problem, which, there's nothing to suggest that that's the case. Certainly not with Lauren, and also not with a lot of the other footage. But I do, as a trainer, I can kind of understand where that impulse comes from, which is that if it's a physical problem, if it's a veterinary problem, it takes it out of the realm of the trainer's control. And I think educating trainers to spot these behaviors early is to their advantage, because the earlier you help your clients catch these things, the less it's going to impact your business, your bottom line, your ability to be successful as a trainer. But there is sort of a knee-jerk reaction of wanting to blame something that I can do something about as a trainer. And so I just wanted to bring that up because there was some of that. I also heard from a veterinarian that she didn't feel this way, but that some vets felt that if they were to point out these behaviors early on in the process before the horse was lame, they would be seen as trying to bring it into their realm of control and trying to spend people's money on horses that aren't lame. And in response to that, we've talked a lot about the need for vets that specialize in this. I think people that nobody knows their horse better than the owner, and which is one of the things I love about this film, is that it really does focus on Lauren and how close she is with Galina. And I, as a trainer, always defer in some way or another to the owner's instinct when they have a bond with their horse, because they're going to be the ones that are going to notice how it's standing, notice that it's changed a little bit, notice that the mood is a little off. And so I think it's wonderful that we highlight that important role that the owner play in that. And I think owners should feel empowered to seek out veterinarians that are using the RHP. And we need to encourage veterinarians to advertise that they are trained to use it and know how to use it and will employ it, because I do think that overall people want to find this information out early.
Yeah. And I think it's really, really important that we recognize that the fact that they're showing these behaviors means that they are experiencing discomfort. They may not be overtly lame, but that's usually because they are using their protective mechanisms. So they're shortening their step length, they're reducing the range of motion of the back, they're working with less animation. So they're disguising the fact that they do have lameness. And often that lameness is on more than one limb. So each limb balances each other out. The fact that they don't show overt lameness doesn't mean they're not lame. It's just a different manifestation. And that's what's really important, because the earlier we jump in and recognize that there is a problem and diagnose what the problem is, the greater likelihood there is for successful management before the horse goes on and develops other problems, and before the problems become so chronic that they are potentially very difficult to manage. And when you get to these very chronic conditions, you start peeling off the layers of the onion, and you reveal more and more and more problems. And then you are on a hiding to nothing in terms of successful management. So this early recognition is so, so important. from everybody's perspective.
Absolutely. Yes. And in terms of the positive impact that the film has had, I'll just talk about from my perspective. I run a lot of the social media, so I see a lot of people reaching out. When I saw the film the first time, the word that came to mind for me was relatable. And Lauren talked about that we all have been there in one way or another. And I have been lucky enough to field the comments and questions and compliments from people online who have said, oh my gosh, this is the position I'm in, and this helped me so much. And my horse, I applied this to my horse, and it helped me so much to see someone else going through this, and that's been really rewarding, because I think that wasn't exactly my intention in getting involved in the project. It was more to educate people about the tool of the 24 behaviors, but seeing the emotional impact has been really wonderful. And as a trainer, it's impacted me personally because I use this tool now. And for me, I see it primarily as a communication tool. I'm able to watch a horse and say to the owner, okay, this is what I see specifically. In the past, I would have said, he doesn't seem right to me. He seems off. Let's call the vet. Now I'm able to say, there are this many number of behaviors that I see that indicate that there may be a problem. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 9, whatever. I'm able to work with vets to explain to them what I see and help them zero in on what they're looking for. I'm able to communicate with body workers. I had a great experience where I looked at a horse and saw about 12 behaviors, had the body worker work on the horse, watched again, and it had gone down to 2, which is a pretty remarkable thing. So it really is, the film is a vehicle to help people understand that this is such a powerful, important tool that we need to be using to assess and improve well-being of horses. Kath, do you want to talk a little bit about your hopes for the film and whether they've been realized in the positive impact?
Oh yeah, they have been actually. And our design was on purpose. Let's release it on YouTube and not put it behind a paywall because we want it to spread. And we designed it so that if it would touch people, we were hoping they'd tell their friends, they'd share the link. And, it's closing in on 300,000 views. And that's good for a long form. I mean, for YouTube, it's long. I mean, people's attention span now, TikTok, it's like 10 seconds and they're like, I can't handle more. But so in terms of views, yes, we have a lot of views and a lot of comments and a lot of interaction. And then it was picked up by the Equestrian Television Network. And so it's being shown on, smart TVs. So you can get it on Apple TV. And that's been great. And it was in the Equus Film Festival and won Best Educational Film. So that was great. And now it's going to be at the Tryon International Film Festival coming up on October 8th. And that's a Sunday at 6:00. So if you're out there and you're near us, come on in, come visit us. So, and Sue's doing a Q&A afterwards. And some education. So that's good. And I do think it has. I feel like, you don't know going in if it's going to work, but if you throw the pebble in the pond, you pray for a ripple effect. And I do believe this has been a very strong ripple effect in the horse community. So I hope it continues. And yes, I do believe it reached its goal. I'm really happy with it.
So you travel all over the world speaking to people. Have you had a response that's noticeable from before the film versus after the film?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. And I've had people specifically want to draw it to people's attention all around the world. So that has been very, very exciting. It is a little bit of a shame that it's in English, so it's inaccessible to some people who don't understand English. And there are quite a lot of countries where most of the riders, trainers, veterinarians, body workers, etc., are not familiar enough with English. And that's my only sadness, really, is that we can't make an impact on those people.
But it does have subtitles. So if you're going to watch it on YouTube, you're responsible for turning your own subtitles on. And it's in, I had it written right there on my whiteboard. I forget. It's in like 23 languages and subtitles, but God knows what it really says. You know, if you're putting it in Arabic, it's the symbols. It's like I go, okay, I trust you, YouTube, which don't trust YouTube.
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the impact materials that we've created, but those are being translated into a bunch of different languages as well. So we're trying to make it accessible to those people as well.
Yeah.
So I think the question that everybody who might have tuned in will want me to ask is, how is Galina? What first of all, what did you decide to do after the filming? And then tell us a little bit about the process that she's been through and where she is now.
Okay, so after filming went through, I kind of transferred treatment over to Dr. Myers. And he has been with the two of us since then up until now. So we talked it over and we decided that we were going to give the surgery a shot. So she ended up having the bilateral fasciotomy on her hind suspensories. And so she had that in November. And during rehab, just to touch on this a little bit, we did actually pull her shoes. So we decided, given that she wasn't going to be at the level of work she's doing, because she's going to be rehabbing from this procedure, we were going to let her feet kind of reset. So just to touch on that, because I know a lot of people brought it up. I did work on her shoes. I got in touch with Cavallo, whose hoof boots are amazing. And so that kind of is that. But anyway, she went and had the surgery in November, and then she went to Premier Equine Center for rehab, and she was there until June of this year. So during that time, she kind of got to be a horse. She stayed in shape. She was going on the Uricizer, going out. She was on the VitaFloor. She swam, and I just decided to kind of keep her there as long as possible. So she had the surgery, and we continued treating her with Renovo, which is stem cells, and just I kind of wanted to just throw the book at her, and be like, I'm going to give you this shot. And she loved it at Premier. She was so happy. She got to be around lots of horses, and she honestly had a really good time. So she came home on the 1st of June, and that's when I started sitting on her again. And in August, I took her to a horse show at Sonoma Horse Park to just do some flat work, because she was cantering up at that point, and she was really sound and really good. At the horse show, as my fellow horse people probably know, bringing a rehab horse back to their first horse show usually is a little dramatic. She was having a very good time. So that was a little tricky to manage, but she actually felt really good. She wasn't showing any of the behaviors that we looked at in the film. But kind of after her time at the horse show, she got home, and I started picking up on the behaviors again. She wasn't happy in the stall or the cross ties. She was pinning her ears at me, at the other horses, swishing her tail. And clinically, she is actually significantly sounder by a long shot than where we started. But behavioral wise, she was kind of telling me again, like, hey, I'm not too pleased with the amount of work we're doing. So I took her back up to Dr. Myers, and we kind of discussed our options, and he had the same feeling as I did. Like, she is clinically sound, but she's telling you she doesn't want to do this anymore. And so I made the decision that I was just going to semi-retire her and back her off of the work again. So kind of my plan moving forward is to find a nice spot for her close to home where she can have pasture and graze, and I can go take her on trail rides and ride her every once in a while. But I'm glad I did the surgery. I'm glad I gave her a shot. and she is so much more comfortable, but she just doesn't really want to jump anymore, which is fine. She's happy and healthy, and as long as she's not, being in a program. So she pretty much told me, like, thanks, Mom, but no thanks. I would like to go be a horse. And I said, okay, we can do that. So that's kind of where I'm up with her at this point. She did, just to bring it up, she did have shoes on once I started riding her again, but now we are back to transitioning to her being barefoot all around 24/7, just because where our barn is, which is in Fairfield, it's kind of rocky, and it was hard for her to enjoy being outside, which she loves, when she's, standing on rocks and destroying her feet, which is why we put shoes back on. But now that I'm hopeful that I can find a spot for her that has grass and she can just kind of live pretty much full-time outside, I'm going to work with Cavallo and use their boots to kind of help transition her into being completely barefoot again. So that is our plan. But I'm not going to lie and say I wasn't a little disappointed. Of course, there is, I love her and I love riding her and I love competing her, but I'm not going to be selfish in this point. She made it clear that she doesn't want to be a competition horse anymore, and that's okay. And I know that can be kind of a tough, thing to understand. A lot of people, I will say I'm privileged in the sense that I can provide this life for her, and I do have the option to show and compete on another horse. And I am privileged for that. And I do feel lucky in the sense that I am able to say, yeah, you can quit. It's okay. And that's not going to affect our relationship at all, but I will say not everyone is lucky enough to be able to afford that decision. But I feel like I'm doing the best thing for her and the best thing for me, because we're not going to be, fighting each other on trying to make one of us give in what we want. So now she gets to be a horse, and I get to sit on her and love on her and do the things that she wants to do. And if she walks into the arena one day and goes, I want to jump that cross route, I'm going to let her do it. But I'm not going to make her do anything that she doesn't want to do anymore.
Sue, do you want to? Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I mean, all kudos to you. We do wish everybody had the privilege to be able to do that, but also that the awareness and the compassion that you have for her and commitment that you have to her. And, not everybody can make that exact decision, but they can operate with that motivation that you have. And it's really admirable. Sue, do you want to talk about the procedure that she had and rehab and all of that? And do you have any comments about that?
Well, I think that she could not have had a better rehabilitation program in terms of the opportunities that she was given and the time that she was given. And clearly the horse was substantially improved, but there must be some underlying residual pain, because otherwise she wouldn't be displaying these behaviors. And Lauren mentioned to me last week that she had some ultrasonography performed per rectum, and there was evidence of a degenerative intervertebral disc at the lumbosacral junction. And that is certainly sufficient to cause discomfort during ridden exercise. Most of the horses which have that problem are very comfortable if they're in pasture exercise or in hacking exercise, but when they ask for more demanding work, particularly that which asks for more collection or more hind limb impulsion, they tend to be compromised in their performance. And this is a sort of thing that sometimes happens. It's a bit like I was mentioning before about peeling the onion. You take away several different sources of pain, and then the horse feels a great deal better, but under certain circumstances may now have pain that is dominant from another source. And in this case, I suspect that the lumbosacral joint is the principal problem. And that's just one of those things. But it is important that Lauren has continued to listen to the horse and not said, well, I've spent all this money, she must be better, and we're going to make her do it now. She's saying, I've observed the horse's behavior. The horse is communicating with me that it is not comfortable doing this level of work. And that's the very important thing. And I always say to people during the rehabilitation from any problem that use the Ridden Horse pain ethogram during the rehabilitation period and thereafter, because it's a gradual increase in the Ridden Horse pain ethogram score is a sign that something's not right. So maybe we have previously medicated a fetlock joint. Well, if the scores start to go up again, maybe we think about remedicating the fetlock joint before the horse becomes overtly lame again. So we can use the Ridden Horse pain ethogram not just from a diagnostic point in before we've initiated diagnostic techniques and treatments, but we can also use it afterwards as a continuing monitoring tool. And I think that that is very valuable.
And if I can add, I just kind of wanted to say in regards to that, if this was available for me earlier, which I truly wish it was, if I could, push you forward a little faster, I would have loved to be able to catch a lot of these things earlier, because yes, her hind suspensories at the moment are probably the best part of her right now. Like, we've rehabbed those like you wouldn't believe, but because she was compensating for so long and was trying to find ways to make her feel better, she did a lot more damage to a lot of other parts of her body, like her lumbosacral, and her neck is sore and her back, And so, yes, I'm not going to say we fixed that problem, but I rehabbed that problem, but that didn't necessarily fix everything, And if I had been able to catch all of these behaviors years and years ago, I would have hoped that, I wouldn't be where I am now. And you live and you learn. And I'm not going to say that it doesn't suck. It sucks. And I'm not happy about it all the time. And I've definitely shed enough tears to, fill a small lake. But I know now, and the next horse I have, and horses down the road and down the line for me, I know now. And so I'm hoping that I can stay on top of little things, because they are, they're sport horses. And I know that I hurt sometimes after I work out too hard. And if I don't take care of myself, then I'm going to cause more issues. And it's the same for our horses. So if anyone takes anything out of this, is just don't let things get to the point where your horse is lame. Like, be able to use the resources that are out now to catch it and to stop things from getting worse. And I think that's what I've learned from this process. And I hope other people do too.
Yeah, that is the perfect segue to wrap up, because I think that is overall the impact that we want this film to have, is not just that this be used as a diagnostic tool, but that it be used as a monitoring tool. I know I'm incorporating it into my training program, where we are formally evaluating the horses on a regular basis, and then as a follow-up as well. So it's something that you use from the beginning all the way through and continue to use. And it's a really powerful tool for that purpose. I want to mention that we are going to be doing live on feet, because that is the topic that a lot of people seem to be interested in feedback from the film. We're going to be doing that, I think, on October 19th. We have done one on back pain, and I think we've discussed doing one on pelvic and SI joint dysfunction as well, because those are things that people are very interested in. We have created impact materials to help people use the ethogram. Megan, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was just going to share my screen here, because we do have some resources available for folks who want to look at more of the resources that are available. So just going to pull this up. so that everybody has that available to look at there.
I can't see anything.
Nope, I can't see. There we go.
Yeah.
Takes a minute. Computer's catching up to us all. So yeah, on our websites, the website that you all are probably following already to keep yourselves updated about what we're doing in the future. As Jody mentioned, talking about feet, looking at these lives that we've done in the past. Those are on 24horsebehaviors.org. We have the Ask Dr. Dyson blog, and we have videos as well as written work that Dr. Dyson is contributing there. And we have our mobile field guide for the 24 behaviors. So it has in-depth illustrations to really highlight what those behaviors look like, as well as the ethogram descriptions of those behaviors. We have Ridden Horse Pain Ethogram Checklist, which is currently being updated, and there are additional checklists that Dr. Sue has come up with for veterinarians to be able to share with their clients, and for clients to be able to use to give really solid history to their veterinarians. So keep an eye on 24horsebehaviors.org, as well as trainwithtrustproject.org. We'll have the free resources available on both of those sites. And we also have 24 behaviors posters, both small and large versions with illustrations of the behaviors. Those are available for sale as a fundraiser for the Train with Trust project. And then, Dr. Sue, the big news is that the ebook, Harmonious Horsemanship, Use of the Ridden Horse Ethogram to Optimize Potential, Partnership, and Performance, co-authored by yourself and Sue Palmer. That was released today. So people who pre-ordered will have received that. And the hard copy has gone to print. Is that correct, Dr. Sue?
It's been delivered to the warehouse, and my copy's arriving tomorrow by courier.
Great.
I think I saw Sue Palmer said that it would be shipping today or tomorrow, something like that, to other people who've ordered it.
Yeah, and so for those of you who are interested in ordering that book, you can look for that at harmoniousHorsemanship.co.uk. Little tongue twister there. For those in the United States, it will be available on Amazon as well. And
you can order it from the United States or other countries from both, I think.
From both. Okay, good. So with that, it looks like we're about to wrap up. I didn't have any questions come through live that I was able to grab out of either of the places. But what I did get is a lot of comments, really people appreciating how much this film has had an impact, how they've been able to reach out to others as they've been attending conferences, and really help spreading the word about all of this. So we're so happy that everyone is continuing to tune in as we're continuing to talk about all of the really important evidence-based information that is available. And so we'll look forward to seeing folks coming up. I believe I have, I'm not going to quote the date because I'm not looking at my outline because I'm screen sharing. But we have our next live with Dr. Sue. We'll be answering questions about feet and shoeing and all of that. So tune in, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next time. Thanks so much for joining us.
I want to give a shout out to Dr. Baisley, who was also in the film, who would have joined us, except that she had a baby 5 days ago. So congratulations to her and her husband and baby Nora.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.